My name is Yurin Park, and today I'd like to talk about the gender pay gap. This is a topic that we often hear about in media and in social debates. Governments sometimes discuss policies to reduce it, and companies are pressured to be more transparent about wages. But the important question is, what does the data actually shows? Is there really a gap between men and women? And if so, is the gap the same across every industry or does it vary? And this is our tables of contents today. We're gonna do the hypothesis testing first, and I'll show the pivot tables and chart and also visualization as well. And this is just what I talked about. To answer these questions, I analyzed the average weekly earning data set from the ABS, Australian Bureau of Statistics. This dataset is considered highly reliable because it collects information from businesses all across Australia and it reports weekly earnings for full-time adult employees. Importantly, it splits the result by gender and by industry, covering the years from 1995 all the way to 2025. So it gives us 30 years of evidence to study these issues. And I want to talk about the concept of hypothesis testing before we start on. There are basically two hypotheses called first, null hypothesis. This is a statement of no effect or no difference, representing the default assumption. The second one is alternative hypothesis. This is the opposite of the null hypothesis, stating there is a significant effect or difference. For our studies, we I might can say our null hypothesis is the weekly pay gap is not different between men and women. And our alternative hypothesis, H1, is the weekly pay is different men and women. And this is a very typical statistical question. Are two groups actually different, or are the small differences we see just due to random variation? To test this formally, I used a t-test, which is appropriate here because we have matched pair of male and female earnings for the same time period. Let's move on to Excel's part. So basically, I got two data sets here. The first one is total weekly average pay for males and females. And I'm gonna use this data to do t-test. Before we start our t-test, I want to explain about three common types of t-test. The first one is one sample t-test. This compares the mean of the one group against a known value. For example, checking if the average weekly earnings are different from $1,000. The second type is two sample t-test. This compares the means of two separate groups. For instance, if we want to test whether the average earnings of workers in Sydney are different from those in Melbourne. The last one is parity test. This compares two related groups measured in pairs. For example, when we want to test the benefits of new diet pill, we can compare the before data and after after the pill data for some patients. In our studies, the two sample t-test is the right option to use because we have two independent value, women and men, and there is a term called confidence level in t-test. Confidence level is for the p-value. The confidence level determines whether null hypothesis is rejected or not. For our test, the confidence level is 0.05. The t-test produced p-value, which tell us how likely it is that we would observe a difference of this size if there were actually no real gap. In other words, it measures the probability that the observed result is due to chance. Let's do the t-test. So you can just basically go to the data ribbon tab and click the data analysis. and click the t-test. It's a two sample assuming unequal variance because we don't know our variances. And just choose the variable one range for like click it and until in the end. And for the variable 2, click the female tab and in the end. And our hypothesis mean difference is 0, and I included the labels, so take the label. And our output range is t-test, and here we go. Yeah. And let's look at the result. In our test, our p-value was far smaller than 0.05, which is 0.017 something. This is really strong result. So statistically, we can reject the null hypothesis with confidence. And the conclusion will be like this. There is a statistically significant gender pay gap in Australia. And importantly, this gap has persisted over the entire 30 years period, not just in 1 or 2 years. So, does every industry show the same level of differences, or are the gaps more pronounced in some industries than in others? To invest this, I used the industry level earnings data from ABS. This dataset includes male and female average earnings for many industries such as mining, construction, education, and healthcare, and a lot more. I used the pivot table to compare male and female earnings side by side across industry. And and also I calculated two additional measures. Is basically gap dollar and female percentage of male. Actually, I did this through Power Query to concatenate data. So I don't have any like formulas here, but I can just tell them. The first is the gap in dollars. The male minus female value. And the second one is the female percentage of male earnings, which shows how women pay compares proportionally. Let's make pivot tables here. So you can just go insert ribbon tab and click the pivot table, and it just choose like all of the like it just select the range, and let's just choose table ranges here. For the row, I'm gonna put the industries, and I will put the average gap percentage in value and also gap as well. And let's change to average because yeah, the sum is that seems right. Here we go. And also here is useful tool to use it. So select the range you want to put in. Oh, oops. And let's go to conditional formatting. Let's choose just this. I do like this. So it shows which is like really high and which is really small. This shows the gap differ widely across industries. For example, in finance and insurance services field, women only got 69% of men earned. On the other hand, industries like public administration and safety had much smaller gap between men and women. For my opinion, pivot table is a great tool since we can transform our table to chart as we want. Also, we can add slicers. For the overall pay gap between women and men, we can make line chart here. let's let's do it. Let's insert another pivot table here, and this table range is, here you go. And I'll put the date in the rows, and female average and male, oops, you can just drag it to here, and male average. Oh, let's change to average as well. Yeah, and for here, pivot table analysis, you can just click the pivot chart to make the chart. And it does seems right, like a little bit. So let's change the chart type. Go to the design and change chart type and choose the 2D line. Ooh, it looks, yeah, I think it's look fine. And for here, chart element, you can move the formations. I'm gonna put the top for the legend, and I'll put the chart title above the chart. And let's put like let's just say trends of weekly pay by gender. Yep. For overall pay gap between women and men, it shows very clear insight. Men got paid more through 30 years. And as you can see, chart make these results much easier to understand. And let's go back to our first one. I want to make like a bit complicated chart in here. Go pivot table analysis and do the same thing, pivot chart. And it shows something like this, but as you can see, it doesn't seem like really right. So design, chart type, combo, and just this, yeah, and still doesn't seem right. Just click this one here and double click it. Go to series option and click the secondary option. Oh yeah, it's right, it's right. It was wrong in here. Anyways, as you can see the the average pay gap in dollars and average of female percentage of male, how much like they got at the same time. Yeah, and I did the double axis. And here's some insights. Across all industries, women consistently earned less than men. Actually, and second, high wage industry like mining and finance shows both largest dollar gaps and the lowest female wage range ratios. This highlights that the pay gap is not uniform but depends strongly on the industries. So my conclusion for today's video is, from the analysis we can draw two important things. First, the gender pay gap is significantly overall. Second, the gap varies by industry, with some industries showing large differences and others showing very small ones. These processes demonstrate that instead of looking at averages, we can use pivot tables to summarize, hypothesis testing to confirm differences, and visualization to communicate results effectively. What's the broader takeaway? Instead of just looking at averages, we can combine those three tools: hypothesis testing, pivot tables, and visualization like pivot charts. While today's example used wage data, but the same approaches can be applied in many fields, including marketing, policy analysis, and consumer behavior research. Yep, that's all for today. Thank you for watching. Thank you. Have a good day.